Welcome to another episode of Frame by Frame, Voices of Cinema. I'm your host, Gerald Pagdato, and today we have a special guest who plays a crucial role behind the scenes in so many films and television shows we love. Our podcast dives deep into the world of indie filmmaking, and today we'll be exploring the often overlooked but vital area of extra casting and background coordination. Joining us today is Steve Tsang, an experienced extras casting assistant, background wrangler, and actor with a career spanning several notable productions. He's also involved with the Directors Guild of Canada as a trainee assistant director, working towards his full membership. In addition to his extensive background work, Steve has also acted in popular shows such as Hells on Wheels, Heartland, and Fargo. So whether you're a filmmaker, actor, or simply curious about what goes on behind the scenes, you'll find this conversation insightful and inspiring. So sit back, relax, as we go frame by frame with Steve Tsang on Frame by Frame, Voices of Cinema. Steve, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you here today. Thank you for joining us today on Frame by Frame.
Thank you for having me, Gerald.
I can't wait to get into it. So let's start off with a little bit about you, kind of your growing up, your background in Edmonton, and what was it like growing up in Edmonton?
Well, I'm of course of Asian descent. I grew up in the 70s. I know I have a youthful appearance, but I'm well into my 50s. Growing up in Edmonton was still the diversity wasn't there. We didn't have huge ethnic populations that we see now. In fact, in a school of 150 children, I was one of 5 Asian children, and maybe one of 15 or 20 non-Caucasian children in my school. I grew up in the northwest side of Edmonton. Very nice neighborhood. My parents were immigrants. My mother was a half Burmese, half Chinese, and she had immigrated to the UK to study nursing, where she had met my father, who's from Hong Kong, who had also emigrated to the UK to learn nursing, where they met. They moved to Canada in 1970, and that's when I was born.
Right on.
So, yeah.
Was that... So they moved directly, was it originally from Edmonton, Alberta they moved directly to?
Directly to Edmonton, Alberta from the UK. It was, the 70s were a very odd time. My father has a huge family, 10 brothers and sisters. Wow. So he had his opportunity. I mean, of course, you want to go to some place that, you've got family, you've got roots. There was a small chance I could have been born and raised in Australia, or Ontario, where the bulk of my father's family actually did emigrate to. But he saw opportunity in the West, the wild west of Alberta. There's lots of work to be had, cheap housing, and he went for it. He later, my mother's, my grandmother joined us. As did my mother's sisters, my aunts from, places in Asia. My grandmother was an English teacher.
Oh.
So integrating wasn't a big deal, despite, English is actually quite widely spoken worldwide. So my aunts had no problems integrating. Which is ironic because, like I said, it was a bit of culture shock for, for my parents. There aren't many Asians, during the 70s. Of course, we would have seen an influx of Asian refugees from the Vietnam War, and we hadn't seen yet the large influx of Chinese from from Hong Kong. Hong Kong was, of course, still well under the British rule, and people weren't scrambling to get out. Of course, and we didn't have the huge Filipino population that we do now, because we hadn't had problems with dictators yet.
Yeah. So when you guys first moved here, it must have been a very tight-knit community, amongst the Asians.
And that's just it, though. There were no Asians. We were the only Asian family that I knew within blocks.
Really?
And it's even in, when I started primary school in 1976, and and that was such a long time ago. I can tell you their names. They were Norbert Wong.
Wow.
He was Chinese.
Yeah.
There was a Japanese boy by the name of Jonathan Iwabuchi. There was my elder brother, Simon, and my younger brother, Alex. And that was it.
Really?
Literally, that was it. There was a Lebanese family. It was Nazar and Billy Smiley, and everybody else was Caucasian. We had a couple of indigenous children, and Geraldine and Richard, but literally 150 people. We were alone. But we were okay. There was always instances of racism. There was always instances of, bullying. We had our house egged. We'd been called racial slurs. And it's not, it's awful. But it's a hurdle. It's a hurdle like getting an education, raising a family, finding a career, avoiding racism. It's not the awful, heinous crime that it is now. That back then it was, and I hate to say it, it was the way it was. And I don't want to imply that we knew our place, but you always wondered, did you not get that job interview because you're underqualified? Did you not, get chosen to play that team because you weren't a great player? Did you not get that date with that cute girl because she didn't like you?
Yeah.
Or was it because of the color of your skin? It's and just another inkling of self-doubt, but it made me stronger. And to a large degree, growing up in Alberta, there's a bit of xenophobia. Yeah. People aren't used to, and they're scared. They're different. They see cultural differences, and they assume everything. I've heard every awful thing. I've heard, oh, you guys, I better watch my dog. You can eat my dog. All the racial epithets, the go back to your country, I've heard it all. And maybe that prepared me, thickened my skin for film and television. Because let me tell you, film and television can jade you. It can destroy you if you do not, have a degree of thick skin.
Wow. Wow. Deep topic there. Very deep. Let me ask you, Steve. So at a certain age, you might face racism, discrimination, but, there's a point in your childhood where you're kind of oblivious to it. You don't know what it actually means until you're older, or there's a certain age where like, you know what? Now it makes sense why they said that to me, or, why I experienced that. It makes sense now. There's this thing called racism. There's this thing called discrimination. Yeah. What was that age, or what was that point in your life where you kind of look back, you're like, hey, hold on, wait a minute. This isn't right.
Well, I think I started to notice around maybe 12, 13 years of age, children, and I don't want to make out that I've, came into some crazy white power sort of life. That's not it at all. I had lots of friends, Ukrainian friends, friends that were Caucasian growing up. It wasn't until I entered junior high that, and this sounds awful, that I saw my first black person. I had never seen a black person except for on television. I'd never attended school with them. And suddenly I sort of understood because, and I didn't hate them. I was fascinated by them because they were so different than me. They're dark skin. And the irony being is that, of course, being an Asian child, and I met other Asian children. Suddenly, it was like, it became a sort of us against them. We realized, together, collectively, maybe that like, oh, we are different, and not in a bad way. There are cultural differences. It had been the first time that I'd, had made two great friends in junior high school. Seventh grade is Richard and Donald, two Chinese boys. I'd visit their houses, and their parents only spoke Chinese. They could not speak English. It was interesting because it was my heritage, but I was so far removed from it because I'd grown up so anglicized. Both my parents spoke perfect English. I grew up in both my brothers, all of my family spoke perfect accent-free English. We lived a normal life. We didn't do anything ethnic or strange. Yeah, we would go to a Chinese restaurant, but we didn't have any customs that were so alien to sort of Caucasians that it would really put us on the map as being foreigners,
What were your interests and hobbies that kind of got you to where you are now in the film industry? Like, what was it when you were younger? Did you play basketball, or what was it?
I was raised by television. As were we most. My mom, she worked. She was a social worker. She was also a translator for the huge influx of immigrants that we started to see in the 70s because of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
My father was a psychiatric nurse. So we literally were raised by television. We would, mom and dad had to go to work. They would get us ready for school. We'd head school. We'd come home for lunch. We would watch the Flintstones.
Nice.
And that went on until well into my teens. And it was okay. It was. I think a lot of people grew up with both parents working. A lot of Gen X, can claim absolutely they were raised by television. In fact, it wasn't until 1983 that I saw my first color television. Isn't that
1983?
And it's not because of poverty. It was my father didn't see the importance of television. We had a crappy black and white television with 3 channels. We lived in the Londonderry area, the sort of middle of North Edmonton. His family was growing. He was making a couple of bucks now. He'd sort of shifted careers. He'd entered into the military as a military police officer, and he'd also started down the path of the justice system, where he became a probation officer. So we moved into a giant house, in the newly formed northwest corner called Castletown, and we bought a big TV, and we subscribed to cable. Oh my God, the world had opened up. Who are these imposters from space pretending to be the Flintstones? They were the Jetsons, and all these things that I'd never seen. And it was so. Television was, continued to shape me, continued to raise me. The sitcoms of the 70s. That was the golden age of sitcoms now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Good Times, Different Strokes, Facts of Life, Sanford and Son, all those great shows, that we grew up with. Barney Miller, that's who raised me. That's who shaped my values. That's who, shaped my language, shaped everything that I knew about not only just American culture, but North American culture, norms and things like that. Now, how that would affect me years later, people always ask me, how did you become passionate about film? I'm not passionate about film. I am passionate about paying my mortgage.
Fair enough, yeah.
I entered into film and television by accident. My first foray into film and television was because I loved classic cars. I was a poor kid. I bought my first piece of crap car at 16 years old. It got me to school and back. I paid $800 for a Datsun 210. And I was a hero. I was the guy who would drive everyone. I got to go to all the parties and everything because Steve has a car, right? But that's all I had money for was that car. I had a little part-time job at a gas station. I was a pump jockey. So I didn't have a lot of money because it was a piece of junk. And when it broke, I had no choice but to fix it myself. I couldn't afford to take it to a mechanic. And that fostered a love of cars. Over the years, I've built hot rods, classic cars, muscle cars, four-wheel drives, autocross cars, all kinds of cars.
Wow.
And through my automotive community, I had heard somebody had asked me. It was for a television show. It was on the Food Network. It was called The Family Business. It was a reality television show where they would follow a family restaurant and all the hijinks that would ensue. Mom and dad screaming at each other, brothers and sisters at each other's throat. Season 1, they followed Katuki Greek restaurant. I believe season 2 was the Ling Nan Chinese restaurant. Now I had friends who just loved to go there. Car friends, and they wanted to cast somebody who was into cars, who had sort of a rebellious image. I have the greasy pompadour hair, a Fonzie-esque sort of look, right? And I drove an obnoxious hot rod with no mufflers. And they had cast me as the owner's son, his bad influence friend. I would take him to go see strippers. I would get him to go get tattoos. We would terrorize the streets in our cars. We would go see exotic dancers and everything like that. And that was about 2009, and that was my first foray into film and television. Literally a co-starring role. And I wasn't paid for it. It was a volunteer, and I didn't need to be paid for it. I was making good money doing what I was doing for a living. Yeah, which was the oil and gas industry. Welcome to Alberta. Everybody works in the oil and gas industry. Yeah.
What were you doing in oil and gas?
So I worked for a safety company. Okay. I started at the ground level as a safety watch. And worked my way up. Eventually I was running their shop. In Fort McMurray, and then the layoffs came in about 2011. It started getting really bad. There was a recession, and by 2014, the layoffs were here. It was like, okay, well, and it was okay. I was laid off. And then but it's Alberta. It's the oil and gas industry. I'll get a job tomorrow. I'm going to take a year off. I've made my fortune. Unlike the guys who were here a little bit younger, I knew to hang on to my money. I'd already made my fortunes. For a variety of crazy jobs. I used to run theaters for famous players. Things like that. Of course, I ran a cigar and magazine store on White Avenue for years. Had the Hub Cigar newsstand. So I had my fortune. I'd bought a house. I had all the great cars. I didn't need the money, but you can only go so long without an income. So and then year 2 came in, and there were no jobs. And I was like, oh man, what do I do? And like all oil and gas professionals, I had a giant diesel pickup truck.
Yeah.
It was a big 40-inch tires, bull bar, 6-inch lift, it probably got 6 miles per gallon, it was the ultimate,
the gas
rig,
guzzler,
and we do what all people do in times of hardship. We downsize. Yeah. And so I had a friend who had a little economy car in Airdrie, Alberta. And he's like, well, you can have this car for cheap if you like, and I'm like, yeah. So I loaded my car trailer and my big gas guzzling truck and drove out to Airdrie, Alberta and picked up this car. While I was there, a friend had mentioned, hey, Steve, they are looking for film and television extras for this TV show. They specified they want Asians. You should go check it out since you're a man of leisure now.
So was this the same time as that reality show? Or?
No. This is about 2014. And
Okay.
Because the reality show was great. It was a great experience, but it wasn't me. It wasn't my real life. It wasn't what made me money because I wasn't paid for it. You know? It was I chalked it up to a great experience, sort of a view into a mysterious world that we all are a part of, but never really get to see the behind the scenes. And I hadn't been yet bit. It was I got to see the behind the scenes, and it was it's okay. I hadn't been hooked yet.
So it didn't really impress you. So like you, I mean, you saw the, behind the scenes, you're like, oh, this is what Hollywood's kind of about. Or was it just more of a, I guess it was a smaller scale, but it was still quite a big production.
It was a big production. It was, but I wasn't, I don't know. I can't explain why I wasn't hooked yet. It was, possibly the long hours. Maybe it was because I wasn't paid. Maybe it was part of me was a little it was acting. I mean, like the whole premise of acting is it feels like a bit like lying. It feels like sort of maybe there's some imposter syndrome there. It's like, well, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? But I'm just gonna go with emotion, and I did it. And for all for all the critics, out there, it did well.
Yeah.
But I hadn't been yet hooked. I went back to my life in the oil patch, with a great story under my belt.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until round 2 when my friend had mentioned that they were looking for film and television extras for this show. So I drove down to Calgary to the offices of McLeod Trail. That wasn't a very far stretch from Airdrie. And I walked in and said, "You're hired. Congratulations. You start tomorrow."
What?
I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
So I spent the night in my truck, sleeping in my truck on the set parking lot with my trailer and my newly acquired economy car in the back. And for 1 year, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for 1 year, I was a film and television background extra on Hell on Wheels for AMC, the American Movie Central or whatever it's called. The same company that produces Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Hell on Wheels, and it was a $7 million per episode production, massive monster of a show.
Yeah.
And that was my first. That's where I got bit. That's where I.
Oh, so your friend just told you, hey, Steve, there's this opportunity. Just walk through the door and introduce yourself and bang, like that seems like like a dream come true for.
That's exactly how it happened. So, I mean, Asians are odd. They're overachievers now, aren't they? They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're podiatrists, they're everything. They overachieve. Part of it is because of their very their parents. Parents are always driven. They always want their kids to be number one.
Yeah.
Get the best marks. The best violin player. All the stereotypes of Asian children. And so film and television is that's not a job. That's the arts.
Yeah.
That's not a real job. So they had a hell of a time finding Asian film and television extras, for the show. They needed 150, 200 Asians to portray railway workers during the 1860s, when they were building the Transcontinental Railway, which of course, as we know, was real life, which actually happened in the United States, but they were too busy being students or being studious, and nobody was interested. So they took me immediately.
So what year was this?
I think this is about 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, 2014. This happened, and I didn't even see a casting director. It was it was somebody at the office where they also did costume fittings. I believe it was a costume girl that said, "Yeah, you should do it." And I think maybe she talked to some people at the costume department and said, "Yeah, get this guy in. We need him."
Yeah.
Because they were that desperate.
Wow.
They were borderline putting guys in yellow face.
Oh, wow.
That's how desperate they were to get people. They had actually hired some indigenous actors, and because they had long black hair, and they placed them in the deep background, because they had dark skin, but they couldn't quite make out their features, because that's how desperate they were for people.
Wow. So you walked in there, and that led to a whole year of employment, 5 days a week, and
as a film and television extra, and that happens occasionally because you become continuity, and that's what had happened to me. I'd become continuity. They would need me. They'd call me up and say, "Hey, Steve, do you want to go to Canada and ask us? We'll put you up in a hotel for a week." I'm like, "Yeah, yes, I do." There were days where I would sleep in the back of my car because it was Monday through Friday, and I didn't know anybody in Calgary. I had a smattering of friends here or there. I would eventually meet people, and they would let me couch surf. So, there are lots of nights where I'd crash my car, brush my teeth with bottled water, and be on set, for 16-hour days, and wash, rinse, and repeat, and do that through Monday through Friday.
So this opportunity right here, you mentioned got you hooked.
Yeah.
So what was it when you say it got me hooked? What do you mean exactly by that?
It's interesting because maybe I discovered, and I met a lot of like-minded people. I met other Asian people. They were doing this. They had taken a chance. They had decided that they weren't doctors or lawyers or overachievers. They were just like me. They were people that wanted to live a life less ordinary. But they were Asian, and so somehow that validated it. I wasn't this crazy foreign guy doing this alone against pushing against convention.
Yeah.
There were other Asian guys doing it, and it was easy. It was easy. I found it easy. It was long days. It was, they would, you, Steve, you walk here, do this, do that, get into this costume here, or it's time to eat, okay, you guys are wrapped. I didn't find it hard. And then, in talking to my contemporaries, it was like, hey, so they're filming another show here and they're looking for Asian guys. Let's check it out, and at the time they were filming Burn Your Maps in Calgary, Alberta. And it was about the premise of the story is a Caucasian child feels he is the reincarnation of a Mongolian goat herder. Okay. And again, it was a call for Asians, right? So I applied and I was a shoo-in, and I did that, and that led to other productions. It led to commercials. It led to other shows as a film and television extra. Heartland, the bread and butter of all shows. All kinds of things. And that's where I caught the attention of a casting director. He liked my my temperament. He liked my rapport. He liked my my professionalism. He liked that I had. I guess he just liked my energy, liked my look, and he said, hey, I need extras wranglers. You've been doing this a while now. You know the industry very well. How'd you like to be an extras wrangler for me? And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And so for Randy Hutchins and Curtis Cripps, I was a wrangler in 2018's starring called Tin Star, starring Tim Roth. And that was my first gig as an extras wrangler. It was and it came easy to me. I greatly enjoyed it, and then came other opportunities. Other shows that I would wrangle for him on. It was the Jan Arden show, Heartland at the time. and another show called High School, the Tegan and Sarah biopic. Now, what all these have in common is, of course, that none of these are indie shows. These are all huge network shows. These are Netflix. These are AMC. These are Sky, which is a huge network in the UK. They're CBC. They're NBC. They're Disney. So I was lucky. I was spared having to go the traditional route of student films.
Yeah, you kind of just jumped that line.
I did. And it's luck. It was luck.
Yeah.
It was at the right place at the right time, saying the right things to the right people, and being at the right place. I have since done independent films, and I got to say, I love it. Oh my God, they're great. And I did wrangling for a really long time.
Steve, for those for the viewers who are listening, can you explain kind of what a wrangler is?
Okay. Now, extras wrangler is a colloquial term, and it took me a while to get used to the term because I didn't like it. Wrangling implies that people are cattle to be herded. So I had trouble using that term. I prefer to call myself as a background extras coordinator or extras casting assistant. The colloquial term is a BG wrangler. Most film professionals, you say, what do you do? I'm a BG wrangler. They know immediately what you're talking about. Now, it's a DGC position. You are essentially an AD. You are, except for in Alberta. Alberta is the only place it is not a DGC position. Directors Guild of Canada, for those that don't know what DGC is. The Directors Guild of Canada they are a body that takes sort of their union that, they are the brotherhood for directors, assistant directors, locations PAs, and people of that ilk, And there are many unions in the film and television industry, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
Except for in Alberta, as mentioned, that they do not have, wranglers are not union. There is a push to make them union. A lot of the casting directors don't like that, but, it's neither here nor there for me.
Yeah.
I'll continue to work.
So you're a wrangler now. How did you know at this time you're hooked? You're hooked into the film industry. You got your taste of it. But looking and being involved in the background, you as a wrangler, now you're exposed to a different level of I guess how the film industry works, right? So now you're in kind of management role. You're kind of getting in the ins and the grits of it,
right.
And now you're being exposed to a different level of, I guess, a
different facet of it.
A different facet of filmmaking.
Well, that's not the end of the story, Wrangler. There's more to it than that,
Okay.
I mean, I did and do continue to occasionally audition and have been in front of the camera. I'm not that interested in it. It's okay. It's I can do it. Depending on what critics you talk to, maybe I can't do it. There's a lot of imposter syndrome there. What am I doing here? I've never had any training as an actor. I can selling the lie. Maybe I'm just a great con man. But that's not the end of the story there either. I caught the attention of some producers and directors, being a wrangler on set, and they're like, "Hey, Steve, you're really great with the extras. You're great with direction. You understand how sets run. How'd you like to be an assistant director?" Now that's a very daring thing for a lot of people to say.
Wow.
Because they've got to hire within the union, but there was the out was they would just make me a permittee, which I continue to this day to be a permittee, and it stepped on a lot of toes. Here's this guy, out of nowhere, spent a couple of years as a background and as a wrangler. Now he is an AD.
An AD, yeah.
How dare he? I went to 4 years of Mount Royal School, and now this guy just came out of nowhere and with a smile and sweet talk the director, and suddenly he's my AD. Again, there's no textbook. It was luck. It was being at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, being, and I did that for a lot of years. I was an AD for, my first foray was a show called, Damnation.
Damnation. Okay.
It was, and unfortunately they only had one season on FX, and I'd made it all the way up to second AD. And it was luck. It was the third AD that was there she was not a good performer. She was late for work. She gave attitude, and unfortunately, I was used as a tool to show her, and so they promoted me to second AD over her just to teach her a lesson,
smug her, or
to kind of shut her up a bit, right? Just to say, oh well. You think that you're not expendable here? Let's do this. I had no business being a second AD. It was a responsibility way over my head, way over my experience level, and it was just for a couple of weeks, on a splinter unit. But I did it, and I gained valuable experience in doing it. It's and I went on to be third AD, second AD, TAD. Which is called a training assistant director, which the industry doesn't use anymore. I'm told it is now called a fourth AD or fourth assistant director. The reasoning behind that is because there are people that have years of experience, and when a production's looking to fill a role, they could hire a guy that's got years of experience. He's not training anymore; he's fully trained, but his duties are of the training assistant director, TAD. So they renamed it fourth assistant director.
Gotcha.
And I've done that for years, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Why not?
It's a tough job. It's you're there the first thing in the morning, and you're the last one out at night. It's long hours, and I mean 16, 18-hour days sometimes. You need to be fully aware of what's going on, fully alert about what's going on. You need to know what stage the shooting is at, what shooting, what actors need to be called from their trailers, who needs to be called to set, who needs to be, called back to their trailers. Who needs to go into hair and makeup. You are, in every sense, an assistant director. You're taking care of the mundane tasks that the director does not need to take care of. Assistant director.
But for 16-hour days and to be very particulate and in the details must be that's very hard and very tiresome. Like, how can you?
It's draining. It's draining. By the fifth day, and sometimes the sixth day. Sometimes they'll film a Saturday. You are physically, emotionally, psychologically drained. There's only so many times you can be screamed at by an irate first assistant director or a director, or told to go get a specialty item by an actor. I've had all kinds of crazy requests for. And many stories, which would be great for another podcast one day, of actors and their crazy requests. It's a young man's game. You need a level of attention and an energy level that is really up there. I can do it. Maybe I can sustain it for maybe a month. 2 months, maybe. I couldn't do it for 6 months. I couldn't do it for 8 months. I couldn't do it for 8 months for 24 episodes for a show that runs, for 4 or 6 seasons. It would, and a lot of ADs can't. They burn out.
Yeah, they burn out, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Can you walk us through the process of organizing extras on a film set or TV production? Kind of like, what can someone expect to be out of that position? Just walk us through it.
So for the layman, let's say you're brand new. You have no expectations. You're brand new. The first thing you would do is you would see maybe an ad in social media, or you would see a flyer at a shopping mall. Film and television extras wanted. They'll give you maybe an email address you can send a headshot to and your list of experience, or they'll tell you to go to a casting call. That casting call could be at a hotel, a a shopping mall, someplace that the casting director has rented. You'll line up for hours. You'll get pictures taken, your details taken, and then you'll go home and you'll wait, because that's just the preliminary. And then once we start to film, we will have production meetings. We will deal with the director, the assistant director, the costume designer, and the writers. So, well, this is who we want for extras. We will go as a casting director. We'll go to our list and like, who do we have? We'll look at our list and it's like, this person fits this bill. So one day you could be sitting at home and get an email or a phone call like, hey, can you be on set for Monday morning? And it could be a 4:30 a.m. call time. It could be we require you to bring 3 outfits with you for costume changes. You'll be driving in the dark to often a unknown location, possibly a remote location. And so you'll show up and you'll report to me, the extras wrangler. Yeah. I will sign you in. Be that no, we don't really sign people in with pen and paper anymore. We're doing it all digitally now. But I mean, there's the odd occasion. I just got off of a Korean K-drama that required pen and paper. And then I'll get you to wardrobe, and we'll get you wardrobe in your outfit. The costume designer and the wardrobes will look at your selections, or they'll have a prepared wardrobe for you. They'll get you into your wardrobe. And then I will get you to hair and makeup, whatever the hair and makeup requirements are. Possibly it's a period piece and you need to be dirty and grubby like you would be in the Wild West. Or maybe it's a shopping mall scene and you're a soccer mom and you just need sort of a neutral makeup and hair. And so I'll get that done. And then we have to meet our set call. It's listed on our call sheet what time they want the extras there, and I will get our film and television extras to set. Yeah. Where the director will pick and said, well, okay, give me these guys and, maybe put them there. Maybe he'll ask me to help them place people. The assistant directors will place people here and there. And that goes on all day. And we film our scenes, we'll change extras off. Maybe there's a costume change. In between that, there's lunch and I'll have to get them to food, Yeah. Maybe on a show, they'll want to wrap extras. And so to save money, they'll wrap a bunch of extras, be it 100 at a time or 50 at a time, or maybe 2 at a time. There's children too to be wary of. They can only work X amount of time. So I'll get them wrapped, which involves getting them back to hair and makeup, or maybe and back to wardrobe to be de-wardrobed, and then to get them into their car and out. Maybe that involves a shuttle. Maybe we're located in a remote location and they had to be shuttled in. Yeah. And the reason for shuttling is because sometimes the places we film in are environmentally sensitive. So we don't want a lot of parking. We don't want a lot of traffic. Oh, I see. Yeah. Sometimes there isn't the space for, if we have 200 film and television extras and 200 people show up with 200 cars, you can imagine the logistics nightmare that creates. Yeah. And that's my typical day. My day could be an 8-hour day. It could be an 18-hour day.
How do you keep track of all this, especially if there's, say there's 200 extras?
Well, therein lies the magic. That's the challenge of the job. The rule of thumb is usually it's 1 wrangler for every 10 extras. So if you've got 200 extras, you need 20 wranglers. Yeah. There are not 20 wranglers. I doubt that there are 20 wranglers in all of Alberta. We rely on, assistant directors to help us out, 3rd assistant directors, 4th assistant directors to help us out. Of course, casting directors will hire wranglers. Some of them are great. Some of them are very experienced, and some of them not so experienced. We're essentially herding people. Mm-hmm. They have to be our eyes and ears. We will always appoint what's known as maybe a lead wrangler, to kind of be the point. The head of the on-set team, and it's common sense. If a guy is in medical distress, then we know what channels we will call a medic or something that would get them first aid or whatever. Or if somebody has questions about wardrobe, then we'll point them in the right department or something like that. But it really is just keeping an eye on people. It's being aware and having your team help you out in that.
So are you also like watching their social media profiles and like kind of, like an investigatory analysis, like?
Not deliberately. And I say that because invariably, I do have a digital presence. I do have a social media presence, and then people do follow me on, Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And yeah, sure, I'll add them. And it's sometimes things will pop up, and then it's like, oh, well, and then that's a friendly reminder for me as a friend, as a colleague, as saying, like, hey, you probably don't want to post that.
Yeah.
It can get you into trouble, and get me into trouble, because it implies that I'm not doing my job of keeping that. What happens after social, after they leave set and they post on social media. Well, I don't really have a lot of control over that.
Yeah.
But I do, can advise upon the consequences of that, and could be, certainly we will never hire you again if this is the thing you're going to do, and at worst case, it could be a lawsuit by, the film company.
I've always wondered, especially for background actors, because you shoot on set, and the final product might not come out until a year later, right?
Right.
So that, from the day of shot till the final release, they kind of have to keep it a secret for that entire time.
That's correct.
And I'm just like, especially if they're shooting like a high profile show, I'm just like, would it be difficult to hold that in? Could I tell at least, my wife or, close friends? Or is that kind of, I'm breaking my NDA, right? So,
well, I think that would be a common sense thing. Technically, we're not supposed to even discuss it. There've been several very high profile shows filmed in Alberta.
Yeah.
The Last of Us, was not being, one of them, where they would actually confiscate our cell phones because they didn't want anything leaked.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters was
Afterlife.
filmed here.
Yeah.
And they would actually tape our phones up with security tape, so we couldn't take pictures. It's not just the film and television extras; it's the main cast. It's that are having to be quiet. And the difference being that once the show is wrapped, some of the celebrities, the cast they're making their way around talk shows. They're on the talk show circuit, and so we can take a lesson from them, about not spoiling it. Technically, in technical terms, even after the show has been released, and you think, okay, well now it's okay, I can, post all these pictures that I've taken. It's, well, hold on here, you shouldn't have taken those pictures in the first place. You shouldn't have been there. Why? So it may be okay. Maybe the microscope isn't quite on you because the show has been released and everything's been spoiled, as it were. But that's sort of the message it sends, is that like, hey, you really shouldn't have taken those pictures to begin with. It's exciting. I get it. It's a big deal. It's not something that everybody gets to do. It's a mysterious, often viewed as a glamorous life. People want to be a player. They want to be thought of as being important. Or it's just this incredible moment in their life where they were on a film and television set and they want to document it. I get that.
Yeah.
But we have, it's my job to kind of get them to maybe, with a grain of salt, not, maybe, okay, I don't mind if you take the picture, but please don't post it. Please don't post it for public consumption. I'm not a monster. I understand that some of these people, they may only work once or twice. They may only do this just because it was a lark and decide it's not for them, but they want to document this great and glamorous time in their life, where they like Icarus, touching the, touching the sky, flying through the sky, as it were, right?
Okay, so let me summarize. One, don't be a fanboy.
Yeah, correct.
Two, what was number two?
Drugs and alcohol.
Drugs and alcohol was number two. Three, don't be photos or don't break your NDA.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And is there a fourth?
Oh, well, there's lots of poor behavior on set. We generally try not to fire people for being a bad background. What do I mean by being a bad background? Well, you were just that. You were a background actor. We don't want you hogging the camera. We don't want you looking directly into the camera. And, there is a rather politically incorrect term for that.
What is it?
And it's called Chinese peeking.
Chinese peeking.
That's what it's called, yeah. And it's when people look directly at the camera, and it essentially breaks the fourth wall. It ruins the take because there's somebody staring directly at the camera, trying not to be a camera hog. We have people who ham it up and try to get in front of the camera all the time. We have people that do things like they talk on set when actors are doing their dialogue, and it could potentially ruin the take, and sometimes we have people that have big egos. They cannot be told, they cannot take direction, and that is literally the assistant director's job. The director's job is to give direction. You as the background actor or actor is to follow that direction.
Yeah.
These are our roles. And sometimes they will not follow direction. It's like, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. It's like, well, bordering anything that's unsafe. We're asking. This is the job that we're asking you to perform.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have legitimate reasons. Maybe they have mobility reasons. I can't do that. And then that's on me as a human being to recognize that and say, well, maybe let's have you sit in this chair instead of walking around if your legs hurt. But I'm tired, or I'm hot, I'm cold, I don't want to do this because of that. It's like, well, I understand that challenge, but I'm cold too, I'm hot too, I'm hungry too. We are all working and we're all suffering for the art.
Yeah.
And if you cannot see its artistic side, understand that this is still employment. This is a job. You need to be professional about it. You need to suffer a little bit. People don't certainly enjoy waking up and going to their job. Whatever it is. Like standing at the deep fryer or bussing tables or doing oil changes or whatever. It's laborious. It's and film and television extras. It's the same thing. It's a job.
All right, Steve. So, and I guess you'd have to maybe explain to me more in regards to your roles as a wrangler. You're an actor. You're an AD. You play many roles. But how does your shifting between roles on set basically affect you mentally, or how you communicate with actors, how you communicate with directors, or even how you see yourself on set? Because you kind of have to switch mindset all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. I train a lot of young wranglers. A lot of people get into it because they see only my side of it, as a background. So I get a lot of background that say, "Oh, wow, I want to do what you do. It looks easy." It's like, okay. And so sometimes we give them a chance, and then they realize that it's not so easy. There's much more than going on than what they see. There's accountability to the directors and the assistant directors. But the advice that I like to impart upon them is to stay in your lane. The shows that I work on are very union heavy, and a lot of people take great offense, when you sort of stray out of your lane. And this is this is one of the chief differences between independent productions and these large scale, big dollar productions that I work on, is that in an indie production, they don't have the budget. They don't have the ability to hire unions. They can't get past the union insurance or something like that. So they hire just local guys, indie film guys, and everybody helps everybody. And that's what I love about the independent film scene. I recently worked as on one of Julian Black Antelope's shows, the Secret History of Warrior Women. And it was one of the first sort of independent shows that I worked on where I was not in the capacity of an AD or as wrangler. I was working as a set decorator / props.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I loved it. It was great. It was nice to not have that responsibility of people. It was a very laid back atmosphere. I credit Julian Black Antelope with being a very good leader, a good director, a good producer, looking after his people, very, very vocally saying we are not doing more than 12-hour camera days. I refuse to work my crew to death. But we would pitch in. We would help everybody. Everybody would help everybody regardless of their department. If the camera department was lugging around batteries or something, or needed help with their cart, absolutely we would help. On a union show, you've got to be careful of that. You've got to be very careful. You've got to, and like I said, staying in your lane. It's not so easy to know which lane you're in. Only experience will teach you that. There are things that are absolutely your job on a set. If an extra is yapping, on set while they're trying to film, yes, that's your responsibility to go over there and say, hey, you need to be quiet for the take. They can hear you on the mics. That's also the assistant director's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility on set to maybe somebody is walking up and they didn't hear that they were rolling and is about to walk onto a live set. Well, you don't let that person hang themselves and walk into a live set. You stop and say, hey, they're rolling, please.
Yeah.
And of course, the response normally would be like, oh, crap, thank you very much. Thanks for the heads up, right? But let's say you're in the lunchroom and the garbage is overflowing. That seems like a pretty simple thing. It's like, well, there's the garbage bags laying there. I'm just going to stomp it down and tie up the garbage and set it next to the garbage can, put a new garbage bag in it. That seems so innocuous. That's something that you're being helpful. But you're now performing the task of the guy, a locations PA, who's allocated that task. You are making him look like he's not doing his job. So that's, so staying in your lane and varying degrees of that, so he may get in trouble with the supervisor. The locations manager may look at that person doing that and say, hey, where's my guy that's supposed to be doing that?
Would people get fined for kind of going out their lane, or is it?
Well, not fined, but you step on some toes, and there are hard feelings,
But what if it's a safety concern, like there's a tripping hazard?
Well, absolutely, there's a tripping hazard, but how that tripping hazard is addressed is what separates staying in your lane. Let's say there's cables running up and down, and somebody's tripped on them, and so you would just maybe kick them aside and make sure that nobody trips them. You shouldn't touch those cables. That's the electrician's job, or the special effects guys. That's the lighting guys. Maybe that's their job. The proper protocol is to radio them up or talk to them and say, hey, a couple of guys have tripped on this cable. Can we do something about it? And they may call a gaffer to put a carpet over there. That gaffer may be the locations department. So it's very important to know when to stay in your lane, because you could go ahead and just grab something and you could really, maybe you could, electrocute yourself, or you could have damaged something, or, in the very minimum, you're going to make the electrician a little bit annoyed that you've touched his stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the same way, it's staying in your lane.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough.
It's absolutely safety concerns, but it's the staying in your lane sort of. If somebody goes down, somebody passes out, we're going to call a medic. It doesn't matter who it is, what it is. That's a safety. It's a health and safety thing. We're going to call a medic. We're going to call the right person, regardless of whose lane that's perceived to be. If it's one of my background, if somebody calls me up to say, "Hey, Steve, one of your background guys just passed out," I'm like, "Why didn't you call the paramedic? Why are you calling me?" Yes, I appreciate the call, but your first call should be the paramedic, then to me, if I didn't see it or something like that, right? So,
gotcha.
So yeah, it's a common sense thing.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Steve. Favorite acting role or a project you've been involved in, favorite project or favorite acting role?
I think that being as a background guy, I liked the non-responsibility of I've been in some very prolific scenes with some great actors. I got to be with Jan Arden in the Jan Arden Show. I got to play a guy in an addictions encounter session. It was great just sharing the screen with her. Another time I played a demon on a show called Winona Earp, and I got to be killed. I was shot, and it was great. It was to be murdered by the main cast member, Melanie Scorfani, right? And that's interesting that you ask acting, and I'm glad that you preface it by saying that not necessarily acting, because I don't know that those are my favorite moments on set, is being in front of the camera. I think some of my favorite moments are just the iconic moments with great actors or great scenes. I once met Wayne Newton here in Edmonton.
Oh, cool.
We were shooting a scene, and the rumor was that you must take a shot of scotch if you were to approach his trailer. And so we were very leery of going near his trailer. But as it turns out, he's a very nice man, great guy. Very, very personable, very approachable. I filmed, I was a show called Let Him Go in Calgary, and with Kevin Costner, nice. Megastar, and the nicest man in the world. No ego on him, very grounded. Sometimes in between takes, and he'd have a moment, he would go and sign autographs or take pictures with fans.
Kevin Costner.
Really? Absolutely, yeah. And it was soft spoken, not egotistical at all, and he was just a very nice man, and that's great to see, because I think he's an incredibly talented actor. Paul Rudd, a very nice man, very nice actor. And I've met lots of actors that were not so humble, not so approachable.
Yeah.
I will save you their names, but I've met more actors that were just very great people, very personable. Chris Heiderall, is another man. He's a working actor. I'll forgive you if you don't know who that is, but he played the Swede on Hell on Wheels, and he's in everything that has been filmed in Calgary for the last 20 years. He's just a working actor, a very nice man. He's been in Star Trek. He's been in, Tin Star, Damnation. He was in Underneath the Banner of Heaven, with starring Andrew Garfield and Sam Worthington. He's just a great man.
Yeah.
I was on the set of Heartland once, and Heartland has a lot of fans worldwide. It's very popular here in Canada, but not like it is around the world. They credit its sort of great family values, and it's sort of, what's missing in TV today is that sort of down to earth sort of family values and good wholesomeness.
Yeah.
It's always like guns and violence and shoot 'em up and blood and blah 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 now. And so Heartland is a bit of an island now in an ocean of that, of reality, as it were. I believe they're on season 18 now.
Yeah, they're up there.
They've been around for a while, and
Yeah.
I've worked on them for years, and they have a lot of fans that show up in High River, and they have ropes set up across the street, and fans are generally well behaved.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And one day we were filming, and one of the stars, it's she has been an actor on the show since day one. And there was a Mexican family. They were sort of obviously here from Mexico. It could have been Dominican Republic or Guatemala. I'm not sure. So I guess that I'm guilty of making an assumption. And they were talking amongst themselves. They were just marveling, and then the main actress kind of walked up and approached him. Her name is Michelle, and started speaking fluent Spanish to them. Blew my mind. I had no idea she could speak fluent Spanish. It was great. It was a great scene. It was a very touching scene because she was, I think that they couldn't speak much English, and it was great that she had.
That's awesome.
Taken the time to come and talk to them. That was great. But moments like that, it was. Now, background actors are always sort of maybe thought of as just being, it's an entry level job. They're awfully. A lot of the crew refer to them as props that eat. So it's they're not given a lot of respect, which is.
So before you go into that, because my next question was, or my next question is, what are some common misconceptions about background actors? And it sounds like you're about to jump into it. So
background acting is an entry level job.
Yeah.
You're not paid very much to do it. If you're a union actor, you're paid a little bit more. It is certainly a stepping stone into the industry. If you're good at it and you can progress, you can grow, you can evolve. Some people choose to kind of break out of that mold and maybe evolve in other directions, but still within the film and television industry, a linear evolution, much like myself. But it's all kinds. Sometimes it's retired people. Sometimes it's people that are trying to build up their acting resume. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's people that are bored with their everyday life. They want to try something different. Maybe they're an engineer, a doctor, lawyer.
Yeah.
High school student, college student. They want to try something different. They want to try something adventurous. They want to see what's behind the scenes. Sometimes it's the producer's son. You never know who you're with.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's all walks of life. Literally, it is all walks of life. Sometimes it's people that are unemployable. They cannot get a job anywhere else. It's the only thing they can turn to is the film and television industry. It's the only thing they're good at. Sometimes they have behavioral issues. Maybe they have, physical limitations. It's in this job market, it's very hard to get a job, an entry-level job, that feeds you, and that takes care of you like we do, it's there are a lot of misconceptions that that background actors are just that are props that eat. They're not. They really are people. They're they put in the same long days that the actors and crew do. They stand out there. When the actor's sitting there being rained on, or out in the cold or the heat, the background actors are right there in the background, and often not getting much accolades or recognition for it.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next great moment is that when a director or an actor recognizes that and thanks them, goes out of their way to thank them. We have had actors buy, a food truck for the background extras.
Oh, wow.
So an ice cream truck will show up.
Yeah.
Or physically stand up and say, thank you very much for the excellent job you've done. We've had directors do that, and we've had people who just don't care. They just they've done their job for the day. They wrap up and they walk out,
Yeah.
We try to show as much appreciation, as much as possible, because we do appreciate them. Your television show, your movie, your film, your project could not be made without these people. So we treat them as equals. And that's old Hollywood. That's old Hollywood being, casting the shackles of that away. That we don't treat these people like a number, not a name, not like a walking prop. We try to treat everybody with dignity. So.
And I guess we can dig deeper, because my next question is, what changes have you noticed in film, especially, in regards to background coordination, since you started your career? Like there's a shift I'm seeing, especially in regards to like technology and AI and replacing, do you have any input there?
Well, there comes the scourge and of my industry, AI. Now, it's no secret that AI has been used to replicate people in the past because of economic reasons, because of logistics, because of whatever cost. We've been subject to the SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, went on strike. Specifically because of artificial intelligence replicating actors. Now, and we're not just talking actors that have passed, a la Carrie Fisher, or Peter Cushing, we're talking like full use of their image, perhaps, and without them ever getting paid or getting accolades for it, right? It's an emerging sort of industry, AI. It's good. It's very good. We see that we can replicate actors long past, for bit roles, but the part is like who's getting credited for it. We recently had some, ACTRA, that's the Canadian sort of compatriot to SAG, has had little bits of blurbs and statements about AI. I've been on set where we have, in the past, have had background actors, and we've asked them, we would like to scan you, and to reproduce them in digitally.
Yeah.
Now, there are many reasons for that, and those reasons need to remain clear. There needs to be complete transparency as to what the studio is going to do with that image, how they're going to compensate you for that image. Example, if we simply don't have enough people to populate a scene to replicate an actor that's already on scene, and maybe change his hair color, put him in a different top. I mean, that's a big gray area.
Yeah.
We should be hiring more people, right? Or is it okay? I sort of lean towards, that we should be hiring more people. Now, what if the scene is dangerous? What if it's an asteroid smashing to a city and all these extras are killed or incinerated or obliterated? Well, now that's a different story. Now, is it okay to sort of digitally reproduce them and have them sort of, we're keeping it out of a dangerous situation? Well, absolutely, of course it is, right?
Yeah.
So it has, it really does depend on how the studio plans to use the actor or the background actor's image. And SAG went on a strike for a year because of it. The writers went on a strike because artificial intelligence is now writing scripts.
Mm-hmm.
And that is still, I think that, there a lot of screen actors felt that SAG, they kind of, capitulated, and that we didn't ask enough, for what they want for artificial intelligence. It's hard to say. I think that, and I was I've been put in that position a couple of times where I've been asked to facilitate extras being scanned in, and I have questions.
Yeah.
You know, I always need to sort of err on the side of the studio. You know, I work directly for the studio via the casting director, so it is my job to look out for the studio's interests. You know, but you know, I'm hired there, to look after the extras, and part of looking after the extras is looking out for their interests as well.
Yeah.
And if that includes AI, you know, and the verdict is still out. It's you know, has ACTRA done enough? I'm not sure. It's you know, it's still a big gray area. I think that we'll see in the future, and on future shows, you know, how that comes up. It could be, you know, a class action. It could be a lawsuit. You know, maybe one background actor is replicated because they needed to fill a blank space in a street scene.
Yeah.
And he was not consulted. He was not credited. He was not compensated monetarily for his time there. You know, even though it wasn't, well, you could argue he wasn't there. We put him there. We inserted him. Well, you inserted his image there. And the studio can offer, well, we own his image now because he has signed an image release form. So it's a big gray area.
That is that especially if you're like, you know, you're a martial artist actor or something, right? Like, who owns your moves after I don't know. That's just spinning my heads in circles right now, because that is really gray.
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's those are the challenges that we are facing. That's the direction that extras is going in. There's maybe a little fear, whispers, you know, in dark corners of churches that they will not need extras in the future. That they will not need extras, or go no extras wranglers, or go no extras casting directors. So I think that that's a bit of a boy cried wolf situation. I think that there will always be call for extras, you know, but who knows, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now, you know, there will be no actors. There will be no cameramen. It will all be reproduced by a computer. You know?
Did you see Elon Musk release those personal robots?
Yeah.
They're all going to be extras now. Put them in costume or something.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, it's wild to think that, because AI has, you know, evolved so fast over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say where it's going to go. No one really knows.
No,
but
no, it's
and now it's just a waiting game, right? So, you know, what do you do, and how do you position yourself now, you know, in the event of that?
Well, that's learning how to pivot. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting because it's a video killed the radio star sort of situation now, isn't it? It's I have found myself, and I mean personally, I have been in industries that are dying. I have been and have had the potential to be replaced by technology, by science. One of the first sort of gigs I ever had was I used to manage movie theaters. I started as an usher for famous players.
Oh, cool.
Worked my way up the ranks and ended up being a theater manager. Now, ironically, film, you know, theaters are that's a dying thing now, isn't it? You know, it's we're all streaming it at home from the comfort of our living room. You know, we're streaming it onto our phone. You know, and theaters are dinosaur now. You know, from managing theaters, I went to the sort of magazines and cigars. I used to manage the Hub Cigar and a newsstand in Edmonton, and God forbid, nobody smokes anymore. Nobody smokes cigars or cigarettes. You know, it's, you know, people aren't killing themselves anymore, and nobody reads magazines. You know, one of our things is that our specialty was we had the most number of titles in North America, foreign publications and foreign newspapers. You know, we had a lot of expats that want to find out what's going on back home.
Yeah.
You know, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, lots of German newspapers and British newspapers, and so that was our niche. And of course, that doesn't happen anymore. Nobody buys a newspaper. You can read it all online now, right? And actually, that was the demise of my participation in that partnership, is that we would see our profits going less and less because we realized that people were no longer buying magazines.
Yeah.
They're reading it online. They weren't buying newspapers, and so, of course, I moved into the oil and gas industry. And, one could argue that the electric car, alternative fuel sources, is maybe, responsible for taking a big chunk out of the oil and gas industry. We will always have oil and gas. We'll always have the need for petroleum products, but maybe not in such a large scale. Maybe alternative energy sources will be discovered, in the future, and that'll be it for oil and gas. I'm grateful to have had my time in the oil and gas industry in Alberta, to see the lifeblood of what makes this. I know what coiled tubing is, cementing is. I know what that means now. And here I am as an extras wrangler now, and there's potential for me to lose my job because of technology. It's absolutely there.
But you know what, I think, if you, even in business or even as an individual, if you stay the same, it's you're going to be forced to change, right? You can either give up and disappear, or you can modify yourself, modify your habits, or modify your scenario, your situation, and adapt. And in time, I think you're going to be forced to adapt, and you'll adapt to how you can be able to survive.
And
right?
and that's been my career in film and television, is learning how to pivot, because my role hasn't always been the same in the film and television industry. It's changed. It's it's always a different role here and there. And I've learned to pivot. And perhaps it's learning to pivot again to stay within the film and television industry. What that linear move would be, I'm not sure. Perhaps I'll burn that bridge when I come to it. So.
All right, Steve. Looking back, what's one piece of advice you wish you had when you first started in the industry?
What's one? Well, I think that I would not. I would tell somebody, and I would tell a younger me, don't take things too personally, and don't work yourself to death. Perhaps it's the Asian work ethic. Already we're working long and crazy hours. I can't help but be Asian and be success driven. And want to do the best job that I can. But that's not always the case now, is it? It's not always possible to do the absolute best job that you can. At what point do you have a work-life balance? At what point do you draw the line at trying to be perfection? Trying to not make mistakes. And then beating yourself up for making those mistakes. Or killing yourself, just refusing refusing to sit down and take a break, literally and philosophically. It's a person can stand to work a lot, and it's a very demanding industry. You can work 15, 16-hour days every day, and never see your kids or your significant other or your cat or your dog. It's very possible. There needs to be a work-life balance in your life, and I think that I would impress upon a younger me to stop and smell the roses. You don't have to work that hard. Maybe it's easy for me to say now because I'm very well established in the film industry, but. Maybe I just wouldn't have hustled as hard.
Gotcha. The role of extras can sometimes be underappreciated, like you've mentioned earlier in the industry. do you think the contribution of background actors should be more formally recognized? Like, are there awards or are there certain, like, do you guys have it internally for background actors? Some kind of recognition internally or?
So a little bit yes and a little bit no.
Okay.
There's very little screen credit given to background actors. There's no IMBD for background actors.
Yeah.
There is in Hollywood. They do actually have an award for the best background actor.
They do.
They do. It's along the line. I'm not sure how serious an award it is, but it is given out. We don't have anything like that here in Canada, or specifically Alberta. Like, we don't have a Rosie Award to give to a background actor. What we do is we try to organize. Every time a production comes to town, they have what's called a wrap party. It's a big party.
Yeah.
Production pays for, where there's drink, there's food, there's dancing. The cast and the crew, they get together. They celebrate our accolades, and it's great. But background extras are never invited to those parties, regardless of how many days you've put in. And I sort of understand that, because there's still that old mentality that they're only just, dailies, they're barely employables, and so, so many of the casting directors, Curtis Cripps, he will put on a party specifically for the background actors. Maybe we'll try to get an actor or two to drop by, some of the crew to drop by, just to make it feel a little more contiguous. But really, the focus is on the extra and the hard work that they do, the long hours they've put in. Where Alison Lockwood will do the same. She's a big background casting director in Calgary. So there is some recognition, but it is internally, and it's in the form of a hey, thank you. Let's have a party for you.
Yeah.
So,
no, fair enough. Gotcha. Do you think the industry is truly trying to move forward in terms of diverse and authentic Asian representation, or is there still a long way to go?
I think that they are moving forward. I think that you need only look at the current landscape. The thing is that here within North America, Canada, or the United States, Hollywood, Western world, Asian actors are sort of coming into it. We've got Crazy Rich Asians. We've got Parasite. We've got all kinds of lots of sort of very prolific shows that have garnered attention. That with not just Asian sort of co-stars. They are main actors. They are the main attraction. They are the box office draw. They are the main actor in the show. They are not the token ethnicity anymore. But there's a huge segment missing, and that's Asian cinema. Cinema in China, cinema in Korea is a monster, a huge monster that we are largely ignorant of. It's type in Korean dramas on your Netflix Finder, and the stuff that shows up is quite stunning. This summer actually I worked on a Korean drama. There was no literal translation to but I believe it is. The sort of the loose translation is "Can This Love Be Translated?" It's a series, and it's from Korea, and it's the stars that are on it aren't just movie stars; they are mega stars. They are huge stars, and it is the second or third time I've ever experienced that level of fanaticism in the Calgary area. I understand with Kevin Costner. I understand with Heartland. But these people, I've never even heard of them. But K-drama is a thing.
Yeah.
And there were scores of people lined up with cameras and trying to get their autograph and things like that. And I think we were caught off guard. It was a Korean film crew. It was a unit shoot. It's a bit of a rom-com, and so they had translators, and they of course hired Canadian film crew members, including Canadian extras. It's as part of their Canadian unit shoot. So, ergo my participation in it, and I think that we really didn't. I personally didn't do any research. I was just like, okay, whatever. It's going to be an interesting sort of foreign film crew. I had no idea. How big they were or how huge they would be. So I think that we're ignorant in our own little world that maybe that there's a. And I hate to repeat sort of media coined phrases of whitewashing of Hollywood. There's I think that we are absolutely seeing lots of Asians in now what is sort of Western cinema. It's a three-body problem. If is written by a Chinese man. If it's on Netflix, it's an amazing show. It touches upon the Cultural Revolution in China. It has Chinese main actors. It's a great show. We've got like Star Wars. Has put the whole sort of George Lucas and Disney franchise has, and amidst criticism too, I may add, as being woke. There's a term that we were all sick of hearing. Suddenly they're putting Asian and multicultural actors in front of the camera, and that, but that's the real world now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we headed in that direction here in Alberta? Kicking and screaming, yes, we are. Yes, we are. We are being, Alberta is one of the few places in the entire galaxy where it is the arts, but it has a very conservative stint. We are the arts. Like, let's not take ourselves too seriously here. We work in the arts. We're film and television. We're making make-believe. We're not curing cancer. We're not solving world hunger. We are in the arts. But it's just interesting that it's been my experience that it's only in Alberta is it has a conservative stint to it, and I think it's because of Albertans. Albertans are there's a large split. We're 50% politically speaking conservative, and conservative in ideology and conservative, politically. That's a strange phenomena that you won't find, anywhere else except for Alberta. I hate to stereotype, but there's a lot of, there isn't a lot of diversity in mainstream conservatism in Alberta. They are trying, and yes, there's sort of areas of ethnic diversity that by nature are very conservative. Asians are generally very conservative in their nature, but progressive conservatives or united conservatives can be very conservative in their views too. Does that transcend into favoritism for people that are of color? I think that that they are making efforts. They are making efforts. The film and television world is making efforts to give a proper representation of ethnic diversity. As far as Asians are concerned, it's a slow burn, but we're getting there.
No, yeah.
Right.
Steve, thank you so much for sitting down with us today and sharing your values, your input, and your experience. It was very informational, and I truly believe a lot of people are going to find value in this. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Gerald.
Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on, I do have a Facebook account. I also have a Instagram account. You can find me at roaddemon@instagram.com, or Steve Tsang that's TSANG on Facebook. I do have an IMDb page somewhere. You can and that's Steve Tsang at IMBD. But yeah, I'm working out of Edmonton, Alberta, and you'll find me working all over Alberta.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.